The RAMATTRA gameplay trailer dropped today, and we got a much closer look at all of his abilities. Now, you may remember the leaks that came out not too long ago that covered a lot of RAMATTRA's abilities in text that had some weird translation issues, but with this gameplay footage, we know exactly what they all do. And the best ways to use those abilities will be found at our website, GameLeap.com. We have hundreds of educational guides, all very straightforward and very helpful, that are designed by the top coaches in the game specifically to help you rank up in Overwatch. We have hero courses, we have role courses, we have everything you need in order to be a GM, and you can guarantee that when RAMATTRA comes out, we are going to have RAMATTRA courses. Go to GameLeap.com or follow the link in the description below to get your subscription today. Okay, so the one thing that we missed from the gameplay trailer was actually damage numbers. I don't know how much damage RAMATTRA is going to do, but we did get much more clarity on how all of his abilities work and how his primary weapon works. So of course he has his primary fires, which are the Void Accelerator and Pummel is what they're called. And he does actually have two different primary fires because when he changes form, that changes as well. So we'll get back into that later, we'll circle back to it. But the primary fire in his base form is called the Void Accelerator, which fires a stream of projectiles in a fixed pattern. Now, the closest thing I could compare this to would be Sojourn's primary fire, which is more of a tracking based projectile weapon. There wasn't a lot of footage of his Void Accelerator, but it did look like it was something tracking based, so low damage per shot but high fire rate of shots. And we'll circle back to Pummel, which is the other primary fire, when we go to his Nemesis form. For now, his other ability that he can do while he is in his normal form is create a barrier at the target location. I didn't see a name for this one, it just says create a barrier at the target location, so I don't know if that's just a part of Void Accelerator or what, if it's just his right click, but yeah, it doesn't have an actual name for it. And either way, I compared this to Orisa the last time we talked about the RAMATTRA leaks, when actually this it's kind of its own thing. It's really strong looking, as opposed to Orisa, where she threw out a little projectile that then created a shield. His shield just sort of like comes out of the ground at wherever he's aiming, and on paper you might think, oh well, if it just is literally a teleporting shield wherever he can place it, that seems like a really easy ability to use no matter the situation. But you have to remember that when you place shields closer to the enemy, it's easier for them to walk through it. And I think in the early days, a lot of RAMATTRAs are going to end up forgetting this and placing their barrier way too far ahead, and they're going to realize that there is actually a lot of dynamicism to having to place a fixed barrier wherever you can aim. You have to have a really good idea of where the fight is going to take place ahead of time. They also didn't say anything about how much health the barrier had, but in the gameplay trailer we see it blocking a high noon, which means that it can probably have anywhere from 600 to 800 health. And his other ability, which seems to always be present regardless of whether or not he's in his Nemesis form, is going to be the Ravenous Vortex, where it says fire a nanoball which explodes when it hits the ground, spreading a damaging field. Affected enemies are also slowed and pulled downward. I saw a lot of people getting hyped that there is now a counter to Pharah Mercy on the tank line, but I have to say, when I saw the one field that was placed, it did not look like it extended that high up. There is a part in the gameplay trailer where he throws the vortex under an Echo who's trying to escape it by going straight up. It's on Nepal Village, and it doesn't actually look like the tops of it are that far up in the air. She's kind of low to the ground when he throws it. And if you've ever fought a Pharah Mercy or an Echo Mercy before, they're usually way up in the skybox, so I don't know how this is going to help exactly, but even aside from that, it's still a good ability because it's CC that applies to a big area and it does a bit of damage. So regardless of whether or not they have flyers like a Pharah or an Echo or whatever new heroes might come, it's still going to be good for initiating and slowing a group of enemies as you start to push them. And overall, yeah, just looks like a great ability. And moving on, we have his Nemesis form. This is really where we get into the nitty-gritty about what makes RAMATTRA different and what his sort of spin is as a character. So as he changes into his Nemesis form, he actually gains bonus armor, which is really important to note because armor is by far the best type of health to have. It reduces damage taken while you have any of it. Again, there's no clarification on exactly how much he gains. Numbers are not very clear right now, but he does gain quite a bit from what I have heard. And as for his primary and secondary fire go, his Void Accelerator changes from firing a stream of projectiles into punch forward, creating a wave of energy with every swing. Now, looking at it, it may be tempting to think that this is a melee ability, but in the gameplay trailer we clearly saw that he was actually just firing these big circular projectiles that look to just be doing AoE damage. And we know they do AoE damage, one, because they're very sort of explosive looking in nature, and two, because in the gameplay footage he actually punches on Midtown, and when he punches it goes into a Mei and a Kiriko, and they both end up dying from the one projectile, which is a little clue that it is in fact AoE. Furthermore, when he is in his Nemesis form, instead of a shield he sort of does a Doomfist power block thing thing where he puts his hands in front of his face and he reduces damage taken from the front and reduces his own movement speed. Unlike Doom, he does not gain any benefits for blocking a lot of damage, so it's just a purely defensive ability just to make sure you're able to get out and not die. That is it. You don't get any cool, like, you know, power punch or attack boost or anything. It's just defensive. And last but certainly not least, we have his ultimate, Annihilation, where you create a spreading swarm of nanobots that creep out in front of you, dealing damage and reducing enemy damage dealt by 50%. This is a really, really strong ultimate. Of course, no damage numbers, but the fact that you reduce enemy damage dealt by 50% is enough to make it strong on its own, as that is going to come into play in a lot of fights that are point driven. So think of overtime on a payload where the defending team has to contest the cart. They have to be on the cart to not lose. Same with the attacking team. Using this ultimate will make that so much harder for the other team to win. With a 50% reduction in damage dealt comes a massive, massive hit to pick potential, and that is going to be huge in those overtime fights. But okay, so with all of his abilities out of the way, everything we know about him in front of us, what does it look like going forward? Is he going to be meta? That is the question we need to answer, right? And honestly, if he doesn't do a lot of damage, I actually think that we're still going to be in a hog meta. So hear me out, because there are numerous things that could come into play when he actually drops that we don't know now that could make him far better than Roadhog is. And those things are really going to come down to exact damage numbers and how much damage and pick potential he has. But the main problem that I'm seeing with his kit is that his barrier actually is going to be wherever you set it ahead of the fight. It's not very mobile, which means that you can't really use it to aggress. You have to kind of use it defensively, which I think is the point, because they want you to use his Nemesis form when you get aggressive. But if that is the case, then he is a prime target for Roadhog with his massive hitbox and the fact that Roadhog can hook him and pull him into his team, and there's not much that RAMATTRA can do to stop that. Plus, Whole Hog is a very viable and very good counter to RAMATTRA's ultimate, with the fact that it boops him back, and RAMATTRA doesn't have anything to stop him from getting booped, so you can just send him across the map until he's done with the Annihilation. Plus, because Lucio Hog in particular is meta, the fact that the shield is fixed means that a lot of the time Hog's going to be able to find an angle around that shield to go for those one-shot hooks. So all in all, it's not very black and white whether or not RAMATTRA is going to take Hog's place as being meta, just because he seems to be prone to being countered by Hog. That being said, if either Hog gets nerfed or if RAMATTRA just has so much damage and utility that Hog can't keep up, then I absolutely think that he is going to end up being the best tank in the game for a while. I also think that on control maps, RAMATTRA might struggle a little bit because of the fixed nature of his barrier and the fact that his Nemesis form will not do a lot to stop something like a Reinhardt from coming in and just beating him up. The only way he's going to be able to stop enemy tanks from getting really close up in his face and sort of abusing the fact that his Nemesis form doesn't have any stuns and it just has the power block to stop incoming damage and nothing like a shield or anything, is going to be having just a lot of damage that forces those targets to play more carefully and more aware of that damage output that he has. So definitely just keep an eye out on those two characters in particular, Reinhardt and Roadhog, because I think those are going to be the best to play against RAMATTRA. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe for more news and educational guides and content, and I will see you all again very soon. And check out our website. I'm telling you, it has some amazing content up there, so go and take a look. In the meantime though, guys, this has been Highway. It's always great speaking with you. I will see you all again very soon. Take care and peace.